today my guest is Socrates Rosenfeld. Socrates is the CEO and founder of Technologies, a platform that helps brands build that notoriety, that recognition, and is a leading provider of a new platform called Indirect Consumer, which is really changing and shaping the way brands reach their consumer base. So, Socrates, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you making time today.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's my pleasure. So, where are you joining us from today, Socrates?
I'm joining you from my home in beautiful Santa Cruz, California. Not a bad place to be in the world today.
Wonderful. Yeah, I wouldn't mind being in California. We still have a little snow here on the ground in Colorado, so warmth is good.
Yes.
Now, let's go through your history. You have a fascinating history. You were in the military, and let me just say, it's never too late. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
It's much appreciated. And once you were out of the military, you went to MIT. You worked at McKinsey. McKinsey is a global leader in providing strategic and management consulting. So that's an amazing job. And what was your specific focus or sectors of focus while you were there, and how did that shape your building the Technology company?
Great question. I was very fortunate to land at McKinsey after business school. And one of the beautiful parts about management consultant in general, and particularly in McKinsey, because they do a phenomenal job of it, is they'll take someone like me who has had no traditional business experience and be able to put them in a position where we as the consultants can get exposed to a bunch of different businesses or verticals or functions, start to uncover patterns, and then provide those pattern analyses back to our clients. And so, you would do this in oil and gas, or you would do this in pharma. I was very fortunate to be out of the Silicon Valley office. And so my focus was really largely on technology. And one of the studies I was on, and how this was the threshold into me coming up with Jane along with the founding team, was I was studying aggregators, or as we called them, as we refer to them. But essentially, these were digital businesses, largely marketplaces in restaurants. So think Grubhub, or places today like Airbnb or
Mhm.
Amazon for all things retail. 1-800-Flowers, if you remember that business for flowers, was studying all these different aggregators and really kind of came up with the hypothesis. Well, two. One was that the future cannabis consumer was going to want to shop like we shop for everything else in the world. And at the time, it was 2015. And I said, okay, by 2020, the new consumers coming into this space, not necessarily the existing medical patients like myself, who are okay with going and driving to the store and kind of conversing with the bud tender, but the future of this industry is going to look a lot like traditional retail. And traditional retail, now that it's digitized, provides what's known as purchasing power to the consumer. And we define purchasing power as, the ability to curate products based on the individual's preferences, the ability to allow the consumer to sort by different variables like price, reviews, the ability to get recommendations. We love on Amazon, when I put something into my cart, suddenly now there are complementary items that would work quite well. And this is not based on what Amazon's saying, it's based on what millions and millions of verified consumers are saying. And so all those variables, we said, you know what, in 5 years, it's going to look like this. That was at least our hypothesis. And then our second hypothesis really was, is there something beyond an Amazon? Meaning, we all love the convenience that it provides. But it seems like we more and more now are shopping at one seller for everything, whether it's diapers or household goods or now groceries with Whole Foods. It's now computing infrastructure with cloud hosting, right? Servers. Everything is going to this
Absolutely.
one company, which is quite convenient, but also not necessarily what this country was founded on. There's always, usually when one thing gets very, very big, there's something behind that. And we were wondering, and we had the hypothesis that the future of e-commerce is not going to look like an Amazon, but instead will go to a company or companies that are able to digitize existing brick and mortar infrastructure and
Mhm.
then digitize that infrastructure, taking a local pet store and allowing them to step into the digital world without requiring any work for that small business. Today, or at least a year ago, you had big companies like Walmart building their own software, and you also had small companies like your local hardware store trying to build their own e-commerce. And that's, we have MIT software engineers at our company. That's really hard to do for us, let alone you're trying to manage a small business. And so the industry served as just a wonderful ecosystem to go and pursue that which we're very passionate about, which is providing safe, transparent, trusted access to this plant for the millions and millions of consumers that need it around the world. Number one. But number two is, can we actually not go down the road that so many other e-commerce companies have gone down? You take in the restaurant industry, these tech companies are taking 35% margin from small businesses off a historically very, very small margin business, which is restaurants, 1% to 2%. It's unprofitable for these restaurants to partner with these dispensaries, so that it's actually a competition now. You call up your local restaurant, they'll say, "Hey, don't order on DoorDash, just call it in, pick it up." We get all the margin. Then you have Amazon, again, a wonderful tech company, but they're too good, and they're putting businesses out of business locally. The local shopping mall here in Santa Cruz is completely empty. Where are we supposed to build community? Downtown is suffering. It's because everybody's buying products from this entity known as Amazon. And so this opportunity that we have, this timing and position in this moment in time, we want to take advantage of it. And so we have provided or have built what's known as this automated e-commerce platform, which hopefully is a step in the right direction of what the future will look like behind an Amazon. I'm not saying Amazon goes away, but is there a way we can provide for the consumers? Like on Jane, you can search by anything you want. You can get recommendations. You can read verified reviews. You can compare by price. But now you're not shopping from one company that has a warehouse in the middle of the country and getting on an airplane and getting it delivered to you in 2 days. It's down the street. It's your local neighborhood dispensary, and so that's something that we're really excited to bring to market.
That's fantastic, Socrates. So, if I understand, iHeart Jane is connecting the end user, the patient or consumer, and also small businesses, but without forcing that small business to become an expert in something that they may not be, such as web development and marketing and all of that. And instead, you're providing a very easy to navigate and not unfair in terms of cost way to connect the consumer and the business. And that's admirable. I almost think you had a crystal ball because you absolutely read the market right back in 2014. And what we've seen is a ongoing desire of the consumer to have choices, right? And when you have only one dispensary in your neighborhood, okay, that might limit you. And when you can transport products across the country, let alone across state lines, that also limits you. So this platform connects these two groups and does so in a way that's beneficial for both. Now, you compared it to Amazon, which is a well known platform, but maybe we can kind of compare and contrast some of the differences in the way iHeart Jane operates and the way Amazon does. As you said, it might be a future kind of model, the Amazon model of the future, where it's a little bit more supportive of retailers and less crushing. So tell me a little bit about the similarities and the differences, if you would.
Cool. So the let's start with the similarities. For the consumer, it's quite similar. You go on Amazon, you're searching for a product, you just search for I'm stuck on this vacuum cleaner thing because I had bought a vacuum cleaner recently. You know, you're in your late 30s when you're talking about vacuum cleaners and getting
I
very
have to
excited
pause
about
you, Socrates. I got my wife a Roomba. It's not a Roomba, but for Christmas, and I
yeah.
swear it was the best gift. She is so happy when she can just say she's vacuuming, and she's like, "Not vacuuming, she's doing something else."
There you go,
But
right?
never thought that would be a good gift. But please, vacuum cleaners are an
Exactly.
unusual topic.
If your 20-year-old self could see you now talking about
That's the truth.
um, but you're looking for a vacuum cleaner. You don't necessarily type in this exact vacuum cleaner you're looking for because 9 times out of 10, you don't really know. You go with the intent to purchase on Amazon, but you also go to get educated. And so maybe you type in vacuum cleaner, or maybe you type in a brand, or maybe you type in, automatic or robotic vacuum cleaner, something generic.
Mhm.
Amazon will curate that down based on your search query. They'll pull all these items and they'll say, okay, David, is this what you're looking for? And you say, well, this is a lot. Let me curate this down even more. Hey, I want to find it under this certain price, or I want to only I want to find the top rated ones, or I
Mhm.
want to sort by who can get it to me within 2 days. I don't want to wait for it. So you can do all that stuff on Jane as well. Then you click on your vacuum cleaner. Let's say it's a Dyson vacuum cleaner. It's the only one
Mhm.
brand I really know. You can read directly from Dyson a photo about that vacuum cleaner, a description, the specs, right? Trusted, saying, okay, hey, this is coming from Dyson. This seems to be trusted. But then not only do you want to hear it from the brand itself, but also now you get to read verified reviews. People who have maybe said, you know what, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. This is perfect. But if you have a 4-bedroom house, it runs out of battery.
Mhm.
Or hey, if you have wood floors, this is not really what you want. But again, down to that level of trust and verification. You're not talking, unfortunately, for folks like you go on Yelp, for instance. You don't know whether or not those reviews are true, false, from a bot, from a competitor, right?
Absolutely.
Amazon's pretty obsessive about making sure that they have verification on their reviews because they don't want to lose the trust of the consumer. Same with us. And so exactly the same experience for the end consumer. You can, after sorting by price and reading reviews and all those things, you can click on the product. You'll get direct content from the brand itself. We could talk about how we collect that
Mhm.
information, the right photo, the right descriptions, the right potency, the right ratios. And then you can scroll down and then start reading verified reviews from actual consumers. You place your order on Amazon. Let's say you're part of Amazon Prime. At the best, it takes 2 days to get to you, right?
Yeah.
At best. And then I live in California. We got wires here paying attention to the environment, our carbon footprint. I'm like, man,
Absolutely.
I order a lot of stuff from Amazon that gets on airplanes and 18 wheelers just to get to my house in 2 days, which is wonderfully convenient for me. But what kind of carbon footprint is that leaving on the world? And on Jane, when you order, you can't ship the product in the mail. As much as I would
Mhm.
love to have some of your product, David, shipped to my house, or vice versa, to be able to ship some Santa Cruz product to my friends in Boston, Massachusetts, for instance, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So, as inconvenient as that is, what that now does is it drives commerce local. Just in
Right.
Santa Cruz alone, I have, Santa Cruz, greater Santa Cruz area is about 100,000 people. There's over a dozen dispensaries in my area.
Mm.
What a wonderful thing. And so when I place my order, instead of waiting 2 days, I can now place an order for same day delivery, same hour. I can schedule a pickup. So if I'm working, I can place an order as I'm, perusing eating my breakfast and then pick it up after 5 p.m. after I'm done with work. I can get this delivered to me. I can do curbside. I can go into the store for an order ahead. It will be either same day or on demand or something like that. And that's where it actually differs versus an Amazon. On the flip side, so that's
Mhm.
the consumer experience. Now on the seller experience, very very different. Amazon works with these sellers. Sellers will say, "Hey, can you, I will, Dyson, for instance, will give a bunch of vacuum cleaners to Amazon for Amazon to wholesale and store in their, they call them these large, enormous fulfillment centers.
Right.
Enormous,
Most of us living in cities have them popping up right next door. We know
very
we just
true,
built one in Denver.
very true. A lot of robots, working conditions, who knows? Regardless, that's where the products sit. At Jane, again, we can't, and so those products sit in the warehouse. You order that vacuum cleaner, that robot picks it up, puts it on an airplane, 18-wheeler, post office to your doorstep in 2 days. At Jane, we don't have warehouses. In fact, every product that you're seeing is sitting at a physical retailer local to you in real time. And so when you place that order, it's not having to go from a fulfillment center to an airplane, et cetera. It actually is just sitting at your local dispensary. But the reason why we don't like to go to local businesses, get in the car, drive there, we got to park, it's a commitment. And then now I'm in your store and maybe I don't necessarily see what I'm looking for. Or maybe
Right.
I do see the product that I want and it's not the best price. And now I have a question, man, should I go into the other side of town and see if it was the best price? That's where it's different, is now you can order this product, in the same day, versus on Amazon, they have to actually wholesale the products, inventory them, and then get those products to you. Some of their businesses with third-party sellers that are able to ship that product directly to you, but that's not really their core business. Either way, it's not coming from a retail business local to your area, and something that fortunately we can provide for the cannabis consumer here across 33 states.
That's fantastic, because between the curated customer experience, the verified reviews, and then the different way you treat the sellers compared to Amazon, you're really supporting local businesses. You're reducing overall carbon footprint. You're giving or providing a great service to the cannabis community as a whole. Um, and you're doing all of this through this amazing digital platform. So you talked about the sellers needing to digitize their inventory, and I think that's something we should dig into, because I am getting used to shopping online and being able to both research, just like you said, the particular commodity I'm interested in purchasing, compare multiple different sellers or retailers of those products, compare not just the price, but the reviews, the shipping times, sometimes, minor differences in a product. But how is iHeart Jane using the digitization of inventory, or how does that benefit the sellers and the end consumers?
So that's a great question. In retail, before Jane, let's say you and I had a small little dispensary in Santa Cruz. When we got a shipment in of product and we are putting this, into our inventory system, before Jane, we had to take a photo of the product. We had to manually write the description into our e-commerce as well as into our point of sale system.
Hmm.
Then we had to, when someone ordered the product, we had to go and run over to our e-commerce solution and -1 on that. So it was extremely manual. Every new product we had to manually upload onto our online menu. Every product that got ordered, we had to manually discount or decrease. And so there was not a lot of automation there.
Hmm.
What's worse is that sometimes, your day shift would input the product a certain way, and maybe they would spell something wrong. And then at night, your night shift would abbreviate it, but it's the exact same product, right? You're nodding because it's maddening at the retail location.
Absolutely. Not only the double entry, but then it adds to confusion. And, in cannabis businesses, for those that aren't aware, the state often limits how much product can be on site at any given time. So when you have systems that might not be communicating, you actually run the risk of being less profitable, not having the products your consumers and clients want on hand, even though you might think you do. So clearly, iHeart Jane is going to help us with that.
Exactly. So before, like way back in the day in the medical market here in California, there was really this super manual process. And you go on these old antiquated Yelp like listing sites, you'd see a menu item that you really wanted. You'd get in your car. You couldn't order it, but
Yep.
you'd get in your car. You'd show up and you'd be like, "Man, I want to buy a quarter of this flower, this strain," and they're like, "Sorry, we ran out of that 2 weeks ago." Right? And it's maddening, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And so then it progressed into, okay, there were some tech companies out there that were trying to do what's known as a scrape integration. And so they would
Hmm.
take all the information in the inventory system, which is the point of sale, and they would just, as whether it's misspelled, whether it's abbreviated, there's the wrong photo or the wrong description, they're just going to scrape it. And exactly, you called it double entries on the menu. And it's like, as a consumer, it doesn't instill a lot of trust.
No.
As a retailer, it's not the experience that you want to provide. And ultimately, when you're trying to evaluate whether or not that SKU performed well, that product performed well, and that SKU is represented 14 different ways in your data set, good luck trying to run analyses on that. And so that's called a scrape integration.
Hmm.
We have some IP around our ability to do what's known an ETL integration. We extract E, transform, which is the T, load, which is the L. It's a very nerdy way of saying we're able to cleanse all the misspellings, clean up all the abbreviations, apply the right content at the right time. And so now we can take all your quote unquote dirty data in your inventory, clean it up, apply the right content, and automatically showcase the right product with the right taxonomy, the right effects, the right description, the right photo. And retailers have to do zero work. When someone places an order on that product, it will push back into the point of sale system. So there's no kind of separate manual entry for fulfillment.
Hmm.
They can check that person out. Now they're getting they're getting their online information as clean as their offline information, if not cleaner, to be honest with you. That's what we're able to do. And so there were dispensaries, and you knew this probably better than most, David, where that were literally hiring for menu maintenance to be able to manage menus on this e-commerce site and that e-commerce site and their website and this. If you use Jane, you no longer have to hire for that position. And now retailers can do what retailers do best: provide in-person service and consultation to their consumers, and not have to worry about the technology, you know, complexity in the back end. Will take care of all of that.
That's fantastic. I mean, working at Agrify, where we provide cultivation solutions in hardware and software to really address problems and concerns in cultivation around consistency, and around key personnel risk
Yeah.
that can often be tied to cultivation. You're providing an amazing service, not just to the consumers, but to the business. I mean, and when you talk about cleaning up the data, I just have to say, in a modern consumer world where we're shopping online, we don't get to go in, we don't have the persona of the people working there, the warmth of the design, how it was decorated. You don't get that feel. You have to make your judgments based on the website. And when you have misspellings and double content and incorrect information, it changes your user experience. And even more so if that data is out of date and I took time out of my day to come to your place of business and I try and procure it. Even worse, if I had called ahead and it still wasn't there. And what you're really providing is a better way of doing business, but it's actually better for everyone, for the business, for iHeart, and for the consumer. And it's the kind of experience that I think that the modern consumer is looking for. We want that curated experience. We want to feel like uh, we're still being treated as an individual, and that the way I like to shop, the filters, as we talked about, that are important to me, show up in the way I search. Now, does your platform allow that? Do you get to kind of, uh, does it learn a consumer? How's that as a question?
Yes, great question. And I love this question too, because it needs to. Cannabis is not an impersonal commodity. It is not water. It is not. I mean, and I say water, but if you ever walk down a grocery store aisle, there's like 20 different little brands of water, right?
Yeah.
Cannabis is extremely personal, and I've used this analogy a bunch, and I love it. And you can, this is yours, man, if you want it. But
Oh, I'll
cannabis is
take
a
it. Let me hear
really,
it.
it's a lot like music. And what I mean by that is, you and I could sit down and we can listen to a Jimi Hendrix song, or a Led Zeppelin song, or Bob Marley song. I'm letting you into the music I listen to. I'm stuck in the
It's
past.
okay. We overlap, my friend. One time I had dreadlocks, believe it or not.
Oh, right on. Hell yeah. You could feel a very certain way, and I could feel a very certain way. That might be similar, might be different, might be deeper on a level, right? Might strike a chord with you. For us, and for me, maybe not so much. Consuming different forms of cannabis creates that very similar effect, where you and I could consume the exact same cannabis product, but it could affect you extremely differently than it affects me.
Hmm.
And so if we treat every cannabis consumer the same, we're doing a disservice to the consumer. And in my opinion, we're doing a disservice to the plant. And so how do we strike the right chord of creating this curation? I love when I go on Spotify and I like a track, I get similar tracks, not the
Hmm.
exact same one, but similar. That is what we're working on at Jane. We want to be able to, when David shops at a certain store, does that experience, is that experience personal to David, versus when I shop at a store, is that personal to me? Digitally, you're exactly right. I don't know when we'll ever be able to actually fully come back into a retail store and spend some time and wait in line. And I don't think that's coming back anytime soon. And so
Yeah.
your experience digitally is the brand. And so on behalf of these retailers, how do we curate their merchandise in a way that speaks to the individual consumer, without limiting discovery as well? That's something that we pay attention to. Man, if you just love sativas and all I did was give you a sativa, right? You're like, okay, that's great, but man, maybe there's actually, and I'm not going to get into the sativa indica conversation with you, because I know I'm wrong already, but you get my point.
You're
It's
fine.
like,
I do.
right, and now even talking about terpene profiles, man, it goes to the nth degree of different curation and personalization we can provide to the consumer. And so absolutely, that's something we're working on. We want to do it again on behalf of that retailer. We want to provide the right personal experience to the consumer, where they're, if I'm not an edible person, I maybe not necessarily want to have to scroll through the edibles in order to get to my flower. And I love flower,
Hmm.
for instance, right? So maybe we move the flower up in at eye level, or just an idea. Those are initiatives that we are working on, and again, I think it's right for the retailer. I think it's right for the brand itself. I think it's wonderful for the consumer, and ultimately, I think it does the right service for the plant, and that cannabis is not just a commodity. There are different variations of this plant in different forms that affect people very, very differently. Technology can curate that and make that a very personal experience, and I think it warrants that.
I love some of the language you use, Socrates. Curation is important. Talking about cannabis as more than a commodity. And we also, you're talking a lot about brands.
Mm,
And so there's a famous quote from an economist that is, if you are not a brand, then you are a commodity producer. And as a commodity producer, you're going to be subject to the fluctuations of a market that's beyond your control. And
love
so the way in which you allow both small producers, large producers, retailers to kind of help build that brand, to build more than a commodity of production, is really a service that's tremendous. And I just have to say, I loved your music analogy because
Thanks,
you
man.
and I,
That means a lot. That means a
no,
lot.
it is fantastic. I mean, when you think about it, you and I might say we both love music. We
Right,
both love cannabis. You
right.
might like jazz and I might like swing. And while we both listen to the same song, we're going to have a very different experience because of the different biochemistry, because of the way the profile of chemicals in the cannabis plant affect you differently than me. While we can both say we liked the Coltrane song we just listened to, you might have a favorite part, I might have a favorite part, and we
Yeah,
also might have had a very different, simultaneously similar experience. And it's a beautiful analogy for cannabis. So
cool.
thank you for that. That is
Cool.
a wonderful analogy to have in my repertoire.
That means a lot coming from an experienced man like yourself, man.
You're
And
very
yeah,
kind.
I still feel like I'm a new cannabis consumer. I've only been really consuming for 9 years. And then,
So
yeah.
tell me about how you got into cannabis. I mean, ex-military, MIT. I think you even did your MBA where at Harvard? Yeah.
At MIT, yeah.
Oh, at MIT. Okay.
Yeah.
So that generally, some people might not say jives with their idea of a cannabis consumer. So how did you get involved in the
Yes.
industry as a whole?
Thank you for asking that. And I like to say that I'm kind of this amalgamation of all different cannabis consumers. If you know, and I'll go on a little bit of a tangent just based on the recent election. Everybody's very excited about New Jersey. It's going to set the precedent. Man, I'm really excited about Mississippi. I lived in Alabama for 2 years at flight school. Shout out to Enterprise, Alabama. That is a very different looking place than New Jersey. And in this day and age, you could argue that very, very different. We're very divided as a country. But man, when you have a southern state and a northern state, a red state, a blue state, old people, young people, conservatives, progressives, all agreeing on, man, cannabis works. And yeah, we don't need to, prohibition needs to end. I think it's a wonderful thing. So my background really kind of bringing all those different groups together. I was in the military. I never consumed cannabis a day in my life, David. I was a very kind of athletically minded, academic minded. I was a kid of the Dare program, and I believed Officer Gary when he told me in, I think, like fifth grade, "Hey, cannabis will make you a criminal and will make you dumb or lazy." And I was like, "Cool,
Yeah.
that's all I needed to hear, Officer Gary. I'm not going to go and do that." And I got out of the service. I was 29 years old. I I felt okay body wise, physically. I thought
Hmm.
I felt okay emotionally. I talked to the doctor. Doctor's like, "Cool, you're good. No issues." I got out. Here I was. I was an officer. I didn't have any debt. I had no kids. I was going to graduate school. I should have been feeling free. And
Yeah, over the moon.
yeah, just like, wow, okay, my next chapter. And man, I was not feeling that. I felt I guess the word I use a lot is this abnormal intensity all the time. I am an intense person as it is, and I try to calm that down. But my after serving in the military, everything was life and death to me. I was a commander. I flew helicopters. I went to combat. I was trained to think that everything was going to be life and death because that was, in more times than not, that was the truth. And
That was your life for those
yeah, those were
years.
those were table stakes there. And you get out, and everything was life and death that no longer had to be. Applying to business school, finding a job, finding a place to stay, helping my wife find a job, moving. It was all as though we were deploying to combat around every turn. And I know there's some veterans out there listening, and I'm sure they can empathize. And here I was completely, I thought I was completely okay, and I wasn't.
Hmm.
And my wife, my brother, and my good friend, who's also a co-founder of the company, they all sat me down and basically said, we see you trying all these different things, working out harder,
Hmm.
yoga, talking to other people. Why don't you just try to? It's Friday night. Why don't you just try to have a joint and see if you can relax? And I did, and it changed my life. I remember feeling the feeling of presence again, the feeling of truly relaxing as though I was a child again
Hmm.
before I joined the military. And two things happened to me. It set me on this course of wanting to know cannabis and everything about it. And now I'm what a blessing. I get to actually pursue that which I'm passionate about and something that I'm trying to create here at Jane for other people. But the biggest thing it did for me, David, was I remember going back and thinking, thinking about Officer Gary and being like, what other things in my life have I taken on face value to just be true,
Hmm.
to be fact, without having conviction myself that this is actually the truth? And that opened a door in my life that I don't think I'll ever close. And so now I've kind of for the rest of my life, I want to pursue that which is true, whether it's painful, whether it's nice, whether it's good or bad, or however we want to interpret it. Man, I want to experience my truth, and so that taught me a lot of if I haven't done my research firsthand, secondhand, whatever, um, I'm not necessarily I'm going to remain skeptical, and I
Hmm.
think this is why you're seeing the shift across the country. I just saw this Gallup poll. What 68% of Americans now favor
Now support.
legalization, and
Yep.
it's because you can't go anywhere anymore without talking to someone who has said, my grandmother, she's arthritic hands. She's an artist. Man, she put some topical cream on her hands. She never consumed cannabis a day in her life. Man, she was dancing, literally dancing, so happy. My veteran friends who were taking prescription drugs, so many of them. Uh, go talk to them and say, hey, what did cannabis do to you? How many parents you all hear, Charlotte's story
Hmm.
almost a decade ago that put cannabis really into the mainstream. There are thousands of Charlottes out there,
There are.
thousands of parents out there finding relief in cannabis. And so, I think the country is waking up. I think the world is waking up. And I'm glad I woke up 9 years ago. And I'm not going to close my eyes anymore, David, as long as I can help it.
We're all glad you woke up because Ari Hart Jane provides such amazing technology and services. But to the point of taking yourself into the present and getting off of that fight or flight, always high adrenaline,
Got it.
everything is an emergency. I'd call it a elevated type A personality, but the fact of the matter is, by coming into the present, you're able to appreciate so much more. And
Mm,
my undergrad was in philosophy and psychology. Before I knew I wanted to be in horticulture, I ended up marrying a PhD philosopher. So your pursuit of truth, your pursuit of what is real
yes.
resonates with me. And I think that a lot of us have taken things at face value over the course of our lives, especially from authority figures such as a policeman when you're a child. But we're at a point now, and as adults, as we mature, you should question. You should question your politicians. Why are they doing what they're doing? You should question what your tastes are. Have you ever, tried to expand the food profiles you like
Right.
or the cannabis profiles?
Right.
And learning what you like is a key way of increasing not just your happiness, but your experience with the world. If you narrow that down, it really is limiting. And it sounds like your doors are wide open. You're open to the experience. And clearly, you're bringing amazing services to the cannabis industry as a whole on all sides, from the consumer, the retailer, and the producer.
That's it. I appreciate that.
So, one thing we haven't really talked about is, you must be aggregating a good bit of data. And data is something that is going to be valuable in the future, but I'm curious at what kind of insights you're gleaming into cannabis consumers and what those trends are, and are they changing? I mean, I'm sure COVID has impacted cannabis from what I've seen, increased amounts of cannabis being purchased, smaller, less gram options, more eighths and bigger sizes. People are
Yep.
reticent to come into stores. But what other kind of trends are you seeing? And what is your thought on those? Are they advancing the industry, or is it just evolving?
It's, the information that we collect and organize, we take, it is the heart of our business, and so we take that extremely seriously from many different angles. First and foremost, the governance piece. When we talk about data, it's a very there are some visceral reactions to that, because quite frankly, I think we have been exploited by tech companies
Hmm.
that have used our data against us, or have just taken our data without providing any utility back to us. And I'm not going to mention any names, but we probably all know the ones that are doing that.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, there are some wonderful platforms that are able to leverage information and provide utility back to the consumer. I think Spotify does a wonderful job of using how consumers are listening, what they're listening to, and being able to curate and personalize that experience. Netflix, same thing.
Hmm.
I think Amazon does a wonderful job as well. Um, for us, for the consumer, that's how we utilize that information. How do we take the millions and tens of millions of orders, organize that? And so when, David, you're on a menu and you want to know what to buy, we can make smart recommendations and curate the list of, on average, a dispensary carries about 500 SKUs. It's
Hmm.
overwhelming. Can we curate that down to 10 or 2 dozen or something like that? I think it's a little bit more manageable, and get it right. Don't do it because someone's paying us more money to do that. Don't do it because it's we make the most money. Do it because that is going to provide the right experience for the consumer. Back to our music analogy, man,
Hmm.
like the best DJs are able to open up our minds and be like, wow, I want to keep going back to you for music recommendations. We want Jane to be a discovery tool for the consumer, a trusted discovery tool. For the retailers, what we provide in terms of information, man, now they get to understand how their SKUs are performing. What should I be carrying on my store shelf? How should I be pricing these SKUs? What are good complements to people who buy vegan edibles? They buy, I don't know, mints, for instance.
Hmm.
Man, that's a crazy correlation that only can be uncovered with data. Guess what? Your next bundled sale should be, hey, if you buy a vegan gummy, you get 50% off on a mint. What else? How else do we package it? We tell them how their stores are performing, how to
Hmm.
schedule. What are the peak times, the slow times? How often does someone come back to your store? Where are they coming from when they click on your digital menu? Where do they go next? Um,
Mm.
all that information is what we can provide back to these retailers. We don't charge them anything extra for that. It's their information. They own it. We let us package that and bring it back to these retailers so that they can make better, well-informed decisions. Um, what we provide in terms of information back to the brands. Who are their consumers, right? The brand is so disconnected from their end consumer in cannabis because you can't ship Agrify can't ship their flower directly to the consumer. So they
Nope.
historically had to develop relationships by literally putting a pop-up, right? They call them vendor days. I don't know
Yep.
if they're still doing them, probably not
They are.
anymore.
No, they
But
are.
they are,
Quite
right? And
heavily.
that poor rep has to, especially during COVID, sit in the store and be like, "Hey, do you want to learn more about my product?" And the consumer's busy, and it's like, "Hey, I don't have time." Man, let us give that information back to the brand so that they can understand who their consumers are. They can understand cross categories. We have
Hmm.
many brands leveraging us to say, "Hey, we're in this category. What other category should we go into?" Hey, let's let you understand how your consumers shop and what else they purchase. Um, let's let you understand the velocity of these SKUs. Hey, do you want something that sits on the store shelf for a month? Do you want something that turns around in 2 days on average? That's what we're able to provide. And then for those that kind of aren't in the industry, the information that we can provide is, some I would argue a real world, real time data set that has cleansed information, Historically, if you look at data sets outside of Jane and you're trying to evaluate a brand or a product or a category or a state geography, it's either based on a prediction, like a best guess. So there's some inaccuracy built into the model there, or it's not very, very deep because you can't go back to what we were talking about in terms of cleansing the information. And so we feel like we have a data set that is really depicting the truth of what's going on in this industry, and hopefully something that we can provide for those interested in the industry. And really, we can't grow as an industry if we are not all operating on the same level playing field. Hey, are we saying, if we're looking at a data set, are all of us agreeing that this is what's really going on?
Hmm.
And because of all the disparate systems across the industry, there really hasn't been this source of truth upon which financing decisions can be made, inventory decisions can be made, retail decisions can be made, purchasing decisions. And we feel like the industry needs this. And so why not provide this again back to our partners, being the retailers and the brands, and hopefully with the capabilities of providing value to those end consumers in the form of personalization and curation. That's very important to us. And I think a lot of tech companies that get it wrong, we hope not to be one of them. And we prioritize getting our data program right, being transparent with it, and setting precedent to say, hey, let anybody else who wants to get into this data program, let's be good stewards of this industry, of the information here, because the industry needs it and deserves it. And let's not go down the road of maybe perhaps some other tech companies in the past. And so far, we feel very, very good about our position there.
And I think you should. You've touched on so many interesting points in which data can both benefit consumers, retailers, producers, but also ways in which the data might be misused by other companies. And, as an example, I was searching for a birthday gift at one point on Amazon. The next thing I know, my wife is on the computer looking at Facebook, and it's making
No.
recommendations of things that it has no business sharing with someone on the computer. But again, it's the lack of personalization. They're monetizing the data. Someone is buying that search history. What you're really offering is a service, a way to improve it. If you can see the buying trends of the consumer, then as a retailer, I might choose to restock on Mondays because I see my peak days are Tuesday and Wednesdays, when I was getting restocked on Thursdays because that was at when I was out of most of my things. But by getting the inventory at the right time, you're able to
Exactly.
address your consumer, and the whole thing lends to a better experience for everyone involved. Um, so it's a real benefit for the data to be used this way, and you are using it so responsibly. When it comes to other trends, I know that you and I in our conversation had said that you'd noticed people are starting to focus on the ratios. And I think you mean the ratios of the chemical compounds, but tell me what you meant by that, because I am really interested in the evolution of the consumer pattern here in the cannabis industry.
Yes, great question. So 3 years ago, no one was talking really about ratios of CBD to THC.
Hmm.
Now it's, and I think there's some wonderful brands that kind of introduced this. Care by Design, I think, was early on this. Papa and Barkley was really early on this. And it's a really, you talk to some newer consumers into the market, and they love to say, my ratio is 2 to 1, or my ratio is 20 to 1, or or 3 to 1, or 8 to 1. There's something there where people are starting to understand, okay, cannabis is not just cannabis. THC and CBD aren't just THC and CBD. Now there's some kind of proportion to this. No one's talking about myrcene or limonene or things like that yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever will. I hope. I personally, kind of being in that small minority, I would love to geek out on that stuff. But I think there will be some things about, you know, are there things that help me go to sleep? Let me understand what those are. We're starting to
Mhm.
see double clicks into what different cannabinoids like CBN. That's now
Yes.
becoming a thing. CBG is now becoming a thing. Slowly, people are starting to understand, wow, cannabis isn't just cannabis. We're just starting to learn about all the little intricacies of this wonderful plant and how it speaks to me personally, how I personally get affected by this compound versus that compound or a combination thereof. And so we've had early on, there were a lot of purists out there that were like, "Hey, man, don't put indica and sativa out there, or put some more stuff on the terpenes." And there's this balance of not confusing the consumer, and but also kind of inviting the consumer to take one step further on educating themselves. And that's that balance, right? You sit down with some people and you start geeking out about cannabis and their eyes glaze over, or you have people that really are knowledgeable and you're like, that's an indica, and they'll be like, okay, this is not helpful. So what is that right balance? And we can let other wonderful companies educate the consumer as well, dispensaries, brands, etc. For us, I think it goes back to, hey, let us make these recommendations to you. and
Hmm.
and that's kind of the first step. The second step is, let us explain why we're making these recommendations to you, right? Hey,
Yes.
we made this recommendation, but let us a little explain, hey, this actually has this terpene in it. This is the main the main cannabinoid in this, or here's the ratio to that. This is why perhaps you're feeling this way, or you rated this a 5 star. Let us bring you more. um, that is so much fun and really hard to get right, and something that we're very patient with, because again, we don't want to pigeonhole the industry. We don't want to force it to go down a direction. But hey, let us kind of dance with the consumer a little bit in terms of educating them, allowing them to feel comfortable, allowing them to take another step. That's kind of our focus, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, we're in an industry that has both die-hard, passionate consumers and brand new people that are entering, that are curious and don't have any background, and might have only, had it demonized in their past, like some of us. But through education, you build trust. And
Mm,
that's exactly what you're doing. And I love to teach. I love to educate. I'm a big nerd. And so I love getting into that nitty gritty. But I do find that, there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of um, lack of education.
yes, yes.
It's not so much even misinformation, just lack of exposure, lack of availability. And so I laud you for taking that approach. It's lofty. To educate is hard, and it doesn't always end up in your financial favor. As you produce a more educated, a more discerning consumer, you might see a shift in their buying patterns, and it might go in a direction you didn't anticipate.
Good
But
point.
that trust you garner is going to be transferred to your brand. And in building a brand, the consumer experience, the consistency, the trust they place in that brand is pivotal. Is pivotal in the brand's success. And so I love that you are helping bring new and old cannabis consumers into a more educated place, and a place that they can more easily enjoy cannabis at a different level.
Yes, and you hit the nail on the head. There, that trust, that is the key, and that takes
Mhm.
time. And I loved your point about, maybe we educate the consumer to where they change their buying behavior, and we almost say, actually, you shouldn't buy that, because
Mhm.
you should actually buy this product, that's maybe cheaper, but it's the right product for you. Trust is everything, and in a nascent market that is cannabis, we have one opportunity to earn the trust, and we've done a wonderful job. And you see that with the political reform. You see that with cannabis being deemed essential business during the pandemic.
Mhm.
You're earning the trust of the public. Let's continue to do that. Let's not exploit the consumer. Let's not exploit the brands or the retailers. Let's continue to foster that trust. That is in the best interest of everyone involved in this industry. And again, that takes time. You got to earn that trust too. And again, something that we take very seriously here at Gene.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you've earned my trust, Socrates, and I look forward to more interactions with iHeart Jane. I've had my share already, but definitely becoming my preferred platform. Um, before we get off and end this wonderful podcast, Socrates, just wanted to talk about a little bit of a trend. You have large mergers and acquisitions in cannabis. I think yesterday, AltMed and Verano announced a potential merger, which would put them into 14 states, making them a very large MSO, a powerhouse in the US. And you also see an evolution of the licensing towards micro and craft, allowing smaller entrants into the space, which have a different need to differentiate themselves through a brand, a way to connect to consumers. So, how do you see this incredibly divergent trend in the market? You have this mergers and acquisitions on one side, and then fostering the smaller entities on the other. How do you see that playing out, and how can iHeart Jane help to make both of those groups successful?
That's great. Great question. I think it's good for the industry to have both succeed. To have, your big generic, probably very value oriented retailer. That's wonderful because that's people need that. Then
Hmm.
on the other side, there we should have the opportunity to see more curated, personal, hyper local. What's the word? Maybe premium
Hmm.
product there, because honestly, this industry was founded on diversity. We need that. We don't need it whitewashed, and we don't need, not to say that we don't need, but it maybe is unrealistic to think that a million brands can survive here. As much as I would love that, so we need a little bit of a mix, and I think that's the right thing to do ultimately for the consumer. At Jane, how we look at that, we want to provide the enterprise level solution for these large MSOs. We work with the majority of them in the country. They are trying to scale rapidly across different states and different complexities. From a tech standpoint, we can really streamline that operation for them, and
Hmm.
it's wonderful. Also, from a information cleansing, et cetera, they really rely on Jane to do that. But that is not at that's not at the expense of the small business. You see a lot of tech companies kind of side with big business. Small business, we want to not only provide the same level of powerful technology, same level of information. That's what really information is everything in this
You're
industry.
leveling the playing field,
Exactly.
making it a competitive landscape, and may the best and most popular win.
Bingo. You're exactly. Let the best service, the best product emerge, and not you had to pay for that. Not,
Hmm.
oh, the only way I became at the top of the list was I dumped a lot of money for the tech company to list me that way. No,
Yeah.
let's let the people speak. Let's let the service and the product speak for itself. And I think as long as we hold the line on that, we feel very good about what we're providing for this industry today, and hopefully for years to come.
Socrates, that's amazing. And I know you will provide for the industry to come and the vital service of allowing these smaller businesses to compete, to market, to essentially make themselves known to this wider consumer audience is invaluable. I see that the flower markets continue to be, around 40% of all the mature markets. And so craft producers will have a home.
Absolutely.
That quality is going to differentiate their products, and there will also be a place for the larger producers that are more focused on value and repetition. But ultimately, I appreciate the service that Jane provides to all of us in the cannabis industry, in the cannabis space. Socrates, before I let you go, tell me, how can people learn more about iHeart Jane, and what does the future hold for iHeart Jane in terms of where you're hoping to take the company in the next couple of years?
Perfect. Well, we always love hearing from anyone and everyone. So please email us at info@iheartjane.com. If you want to visit our site, we're in 33 state markets, iheartjane.com. See what local products and retailers are around you in your neighborhood. As for the future of where Jane is going, we really we are so grateful for our position to be able to partner with brands and retailers. We are at a pivotal moment in time, period, in this world, but particularly for businesses, they need to step into the digital world. This is the pandemic has kind of increased the slope of the learning curve, and you need to get up and over this thing pretty quickly. And to think that retailers will now be able to hire software developers and build their own platform is unrealistic. That's like thinking, a bunch of MIT engineers are going to open up a dispensary. That's not the best fit. And so for us is any way we can continue to help brands digitize their businesses, any way we can help retailers digitize their businesses, and quite frankly, any way we can help reach the consumer digitally to provide safe, trusted access to this plant, man, that's what we're going to do. And I'm very excited about coming into next year and where this industry is going to go. And really thank you, David, and all the wonderful cultivators and brands out there trying to bring this medicine to so many people and do it the right way. And any way we as a tech company can help out, that's what we intend to do.
Socrates, I can't thank you enough for both what you're doing, and it's all very well said. I look forward to the future with I Heart Jane. And again, thank you so much for making time today. Everyone, this has been Agrify Live. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks.